Hello, beautiful people. Today is 2nd of September. My name is Sahil and welcome to the newspaper analysis. Now, guys, GS folder for today. So, today we'll see a quote from the judgment given by the Justice Chandrachud, who's a sitting judge of the Supreme Court. He had talked about ensuring the basic entitlements to the people into the aftermath of digital revolution, which is being talked everywhere. He says, our quest for technology should not be oblivious to the country's real problems: social exclusion, impoverishment, marginalization, dignity, and rights of individuals cannot be based on algorithms or probabilities. Now, guys, e-governance, fourth industrial revolution, IoT, all these things are good. But before that, fundamental and foundational problems of India are needed to be taken care of. So, guys, this particular quote you can use into the GS paper number 2, questions related to the social justice, as well as onto essays and in GS paper number 4. So, guys, that's it. And now let's take the newspaper analysis in detail.
Now guys, first of all, let's have an overview of the entire paper first. Now here we can see that the China-India confrontation are going on onto the LAC sector. So guys, that's it. However, day-to-day coverage of this article is not needed. Then guys, here a very big issue had came, that are the AGR related dispute where the Supreme Court has given the final judgment. So guys, in this particular respect, the entire issue will be seeing here. Then guys, moving forward here we can see that the Solicitor General has told the Supreme Court that the moratorium which was given earlier, it is extendable to 2 years. However, till now the extension has not been detailed out, but the provision of extension exists there. So guys, that's it has given. Now here we can see that the Delhi riots, they happened, and in that particular respect the Amnesty submitted a report where it said that the human rights violation has happened. However, the Delhi police is saying that the report is lopsided and biased. Now guys, just one thing, what is this Amnesty International? It is a NGO which is involved into the human rights preservation, and it is based into the UK. Then guys, moving forward, just one liner thing, we can see that only the regional news with respect to the rising number of cases only has been given, not at all important for our exam. Now here the immunization program of Madhya Pradesh has been mentioned, but in this particular respect entire universal immunization program with respect to the prelims as well as mains will see. Then guys, moving forward, now we come to the editorial page. Now this particular article talks about the decline of GDP which has happened. Now guys, yesterday this entire article in much detail we had already discussed. So guys, only those numbers and datas have been given here. Then guys, this article talks that how 1 year has happened into the Kashmir, but nothing development effort has been taken. Now guys, large number of articles on Kashmirs we have already seen. However, academically nothing important has been given here. Then this particular article talks about a new model of academics. So in this respect, we'll see this thing. Now guys, this article talks about the chess Olympiad, not relevant for the exam. Then guys, this particular article talks about how data as a common is needed to be treated. So very good article, will be seeing all the dimensions involved. Now this article talks about the new idea of democracy. Now guys, it has been said that into the global scenario the idea of democracy is being questioned, it is being twisted, it is being understood into the different lights. However guys, with respect to the exam specific thing, the issues has not been mentioned. It is just a personal viewpoint with respect to the democracy. However, writing style is good, so if you want, I will recommend that you read it yourself to understand the style of writing. Then guys, moving forward, we can see that only the regional news has been mentioned here. The loan moratorium I have already told you. Now guys, again the China is continuing. Now here we can see that a large number of foreign engagements have been mentioned here, in which India will be participating to keep the kitty of foreign allies extended. Then here we can see that some naval drill has been mentioned. Then guys, moving forward, only the news with respect to the rising number of cases etc has been mentioned, not at all important for our exam. Then the showcase page, not relevant for our paper. Then guys, on to the world's page, again the school opening into the Europe has been mentioned, the protest etc has been mentioned. Now guys, here we can see that the Turkey is now trying to open a dialogue with the Greece. So earlier we had seen that the Turkey and Greece held into confrontation over the resource into the Mediterranean Sea. Then guys, moving forward onto the business page, the corporate news has been mentioned, not important for our exam. Then the sports page has been given. So guys, that's it. And now let's take the newspaper analysis in detail.
Now, friends, taking up the first news. So, this particular news pertains to the AGR issue on which the Supreme Court has given the final judgment. Now, this particular news pertains to the telecom sector, and telecom sector is the part of infrastructure which is mentioned into the GS paper number 3. So, therefore, it is highly important there. Now, guys, before jumping directly into the news, I will give you some background first. Now, here as we are talking about the telecom sector, so telecom sector holds a great place in any country's development trajectory. It holds a special economic place as well as a strategic place. Now, if we talk particularly about India, it has a strategic importance. For example, it sustains the banking sector, education, critical communication, e-governance, all these things depend onto the telecom. Then, into the economic importance, you know that service sector is the major driver of Indian GDP, and within the service sector, the ICT related services are the major chunk, and the ICT they can't sustain without the telecom sector. So, therefore, into the economy for strategic purpose, it has a great place. Therefore, it has been described as the critical infrastructure. Now, in India, the telecom sector was heavily regulated, and only the government has a autonomy to drive the telecom sector. But as we know that 1991 we saw the LPG reforms. Only after these reforms the telecom sector was opened for the private players. Now, in 1994, the National Telecom Policy was announced, where for the first time private players were invited. It was said that you pay a fixed fees, and subject to that you can also start your telecom services. Now our telecoms ecosystem started to boom, and as 1999 came, further liberalization was carried into the telecom sector. It was said that now, in order to reduce the burden on certain telecom companies, what you need to do, you pay us a part of your revenue, and that thing will be now bringing up. So the concept of adjusted gross revenue came here. Now, under this adjusted gross revenue, it was said that the revenues will be shared. Now, things went for some time, but soon after this particular thing, a dispute developed. The dispute is that what exactly is revenue? Now, there could be the core revenue, the revenue that a telecom company is earning by by charging the users for the services. Other could be the non-core or non-telecom revenue. Non-telecom revenues like that. Suppose there is Vodafone. Vodafone is doing a considerable investment into some other ventures also. It is earning some other kind of revenue also. So that particular part will be the non-telecom revenue. Now, the Department of Telecommunication and the telecom countries, they went into a dispute. The DOT or government said that as the AGR has been discussed, you need to give both type of revenue, telecom revenue as well as the non-telecom revenue. But telcos, they don't want to share the non-telecom revenue. The matter went into the telecom dispute settlement appellate tribunal. And in 2015, the tribunal gave its final judgment and said that the telecom companies are right, only the telecom revenue needs to be given, non-telecom revenue needs not to be given. Now guys, after this particular thing, the central government, it approached the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court in 2019 settled into the favor of the government and said that Department of Telecommunication is right. Both revenues, telecom as well as non-telecom revenue, has to be shared. Now guys, as from the back, the calculation was made that what is the total both telecom and non-telecom revenue, then it was ascertained that even after paying the money which already has been given, more than 1.4 lakh crore rupees to be paid by the telecom companies. Now guys, such kind of money poses a huge burden, and at that point of time only 3 weeks of time was given to settle that particular thing. Then there was a contestation, and the central government said to the Supreme Court that you please be little bit considerate, allow them to give such money into the span of 20 years. Now, Supreme Court has given the final judgment and had said that the telcos need to pay their entire dues of 1.4 lakh crore rupees in 10 years. Every year, an yearly installment has to be given. So, guys, this particular matter has now been settled. Now, this particular poses further questions apart from this particular news also. First of all, if we see the health of telecom sector in India, it is already struggling to be viable. First of all, in India, the average revenue per user has declined considerably into the last 5 to 6 years, particularly after the entry of the Jio. Right now, just few days back, the CEO of Airtel said that in India you can get the 15 GBs of data in less than 160 rupees, and it is a kind of an indication that for very long telecom will not survive. And into that particular thing, even if a new burden will be given, then there could be a problem. And as I told you that the telecom is a critical infrastructure, if it goes down, then the problem will be very much dire. Secondly, guys, if we see the telecom landscape in India, it has only been overshadowed by the players such as the Vodafone, there is Airtel, and there is Jio. Three major players into the private, and there is one BSNL MTNL of the government of India. Now, the Jio is one which is actually not having any implications, because the Jio, it had started the business very late and very less liability was onto them, and they had even paid it. So this entire burden will be falling disproportionately onto the Vodafone and Airtel idea, Vodafone Idea and Airtel. And if they exit from the scene, only one telecom, major private telecom will be remaining, that is the Jio, and it will create a kind of a monopoly in India, which has been prohibited under the Competition Act of 2002, and even the Competition Commission of India prohibits such kind of tendencies. But government, Supreme Court, I don't know why they are not looking onto that particular landscape. And see, into all the countries, such critical infrastructures are given some kind of extra mile support. But in India, we had seen that the aviation sector has been allowed to go for doom. Now, it might be an indication towards the telecoms decline also. So, guys, this is the entire issue. And with respect to the broader landscape also, you need to keep all these implications into your mind. So that's it. Now we'll move to the next news. Now, guys, this particular news pertains to the immunization program into the Madhya Pradesh that has went very much down. Now, this particular thing will be looking via a lens of health subject, which has been given into the GS paper number 2. Moreover, such attachment I will also be discussing from the point of view of prelims. Now, first of all, as we talk about the immunization program, in India, we started such kind of child immunization program in 1978, but considerable scope was enhanced in 1985 when the universal immunization program was started. Now, guys, it has been said by the WHO that the immunization is the most cost-effective intervention, because just by investing a little bit, you can preserve the entire new generation. They will not be facing the deadly preventable disease. Your demographic dividend will be healthy. It will be qualitatively as well as quantitatively rich. So since 1978 we started to make the intervention. Now, guys, as the time went, different governments changed its name, changed its structure, though you don't need to trace every name change. However, ultimately it got rested under the National Health Mission. Right now, the National Health Mission has subsumed two components: the National Rural Health Mission, National Urban Health Mission. So both have been subsumed under the National Health Mission, and under the National Health Mission, the universal immunization program is also there. Now, it is under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And under this universal immunization program, every year nearly 2.67 crore newborn children are being targeted, so that they could be prevented from the vaccine preventable diseases. Is it clear or not? Now in India, if you know, till even today, large number of children below the 5 years of age, they are dying because of the diseases which could have been prevented if they would have been given the timely vaccination. So this particular thing has been talked under the universal immunization program. So free of cost vaccination against 12 vaccine preventable disease is given. Now what are these 12 diseases, guys? Out of these 12, 9 are given onto the entire national level and 3 are at the sub-national level. It means that wherever it is required, we give them. So the 9 diseases are the diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, polio, measles, rubella, severe form of child tuberculosis, hepatitis B and meningitis, and the pneumonia caused by the Haemophilus influenza type B. So these 9 are given onto the entire nation level. Then there are 3 sub-nationally given vaccines, that are the rotavirus, pneumococcal pneumonia, and the Japanese encephalitis. Is it clear? So these are the 12 vaccines which are given here. And if onto the given time windows, if a child receives all these vaccines, then he is called as the fully immunized. Now guys, as we are talking about the vaccination regime, few days back government had started one more initiative for better performance of the immunization, that is the EVIN. EVIN stands for the Electronic Vaccine Intelligence Network. So this particular initiative, it is a kind of a platform where the logistics of the vaccine, that whether the vaccines are reaching all the primary healthcare facilities, the temperature at which these vaccines were stored, how many people, how many children have been given vaccine, all such kind of database is managed onto such kind of platform. So it increases the accountability of the primary healthcare centers. Moreover, it also helps to keep a check as actually how much children are being vaccinated. So this is a very good thing which has happened. Now guys, coming to the present news, what has happened? The immunization program has nearly came to a standstill. In this news, Madhya Pradesh has been mentioned, but not only Madhya Pradesh, into all the states the same story is going on. So why it has came to a standstill? Now first of all, it is because the diversion of the health staff to the mitigation of the pandemic. So auxiliary nurse, midwives, ASHA workers, then the Anganwadi health workers, all are involved there, and nobody is actually looking for the immunization. Then guys, what has happened? Due to the lockdown, transport was severely struck down, and therefore parents were not in a capacity to reach the primary health centers to in order to get their child vaccinated. Then the third issue is that parents themselves are also refraining to visit a healthcare center due to the fear of the pandemic. So guys, therefore basically this particular program is not being taken care of right now. But if once the pandemic will not be abating for next 6 months or 1 year, and if this 1 year window is lost, then the entire generation will be crippled, and it will be a loss of our demography. And we say that we India will be reaping the demographic dividend, but rather it will be turning into the demographic disaster. So such things should not be done, and government should give a focus onto that particular thing. Now when we talk about the immunization, you might have also heard about the Mission Indradhanush that government had started. So under Mission Indradhanush, originally 7 vaccines were to be given to the children. However, now those 7 vaccines scope has been enhanced. Now guys, from 7 it was made to 8, and from 8 now all the 12 vaccines are being covered under the Mission Indradhanush. Now the Mission Indradhanush 2.0 has been started, where a kind of an even urgent intervention will be made. So under Mission Indradhanush, it has been said that the 90% of all the newborns should be vaccinated by 2022. So guys, Indradhanush is nothing but a kind of a mission mode intervention for the immunization. So that's it about this particular thing, and now we'll move to the next news. Now friends, this particular article pertains to the crisis into the education sector which has came due to the pandemic. Now see, we had seen that the impacts on economy has been there due to the pandemic, the impact on education has been there, but today we will see the impact on economics of education. Is it clear? So the terminology academics has been used into this particular article. Now this particular concept means that it is high time that we should also look into a dimension that whether the educational institutes in India, they are economically viable or not. See, right now if we see the educational institutes, particularly the higher education sector, they have to meet the demand, okay, but at the same time resources have been considerably constrained. How? Because you know that government has issued so many of notifications that they can't force the fees, they can't ask for the extra charges of, or basically other kind of fees that they were charging. So because of such thing, their resources have been declined. Now see, if we see the higher education institutions of India as well as West, there are certain differences. The Western institutes, they are backed with very thick endowment funds. If I give you the example of the Harvard, then Harvard has nearly $40 billion of endowment fund. So if any crisis come, from this particular money they can meet the crisis. And though Harvard is a top notch institute, other institutes also have an endowment fund within the vicinity of $10 billion to $40 billion. So it gives them a thick cushion. But India's higher education institutions, they are the private institutions majorly, and they are the self-financed through the annual or the semi-annual fees that they are receiving. You know that the government institutes are not that much if we see the numbers. Now guys, these institutions, the private institutions, they have established a big infrastructure. Moreover, the fixed cost, they have already been established. Now even if they are not functioning, a little bit marginal reduction into the variable cost can be there, but the fixed cost, infrastructure maintenance, will not be going down. It can't be dismantled. But at the same time, this is there, more they have to invest. For example, it has now been established that for some time the dual mode of education will be going on. There will be some mode into the education, some into the physical form, some into the online form. And for this dual mode, the new infrastructure has to be made. After that guys, as now a considerable portion will be shifting onto the internet or the kind of e-mode, then the new IT staff has also to be hired. Then infrastructure cost of that IT staff as well as a new hardware. Then the competition will also be enhancing now, so that competition has to be considered. Then guys, if even the physical classrooms start, there also the social distancing norms have to be there. So the one class which was earlier, you 60 people, suppose you can teach into one class, now they have to be bifurcated in two or three. Then the faculties are also needed to be trained. See what has happened. The physical faculties, they have shifted to the online mode, but they don't have that skill that how to connect to the student even from the camera. So such skills have to be given to the teachers. Then the virtual labs are also needed to be established for the institutes which are giving some kind of training via the online mode for some technical disciplines. So such things require the even new investment, even when your old investment is not giving the return. Now guys, but if we see at the same time, the students are not willing to pay money, and when the education will be going into the online mode, they will not be willing to pay the same money which they were paying earlier for the physical classes. So the basically the revenues doors have been blocked, but at the same time the money has to be spent by these educational institutions. Therefore it has been said that it is a high time that the academics should be considered. How these institutions will be keep viable, it needs to be keep in mind. Guys, we need to keep the educational standards high, otherwise the generation, already it has been said that the Indian youth, they are not industry ready. And if this level of education will go even more down, then our basically youth will become unemployable into the long term. And at the same time, these institutions viability is also much necessary. So therefore, into the line of academics, the government need to take urgent steps. First of all, the soft loans need to be provided to the students, so that into the aftermath of pandemic, as their families incomes have been declined, they can still afford the education, and so that this money can go to the higher educational institutes and they can continue to provide the services. After that, there needs to be little bit relaxed regulations onto the institutions. Now every government is trying to cripple the higher educational institutions only, but such kind of heavy handedness will not be desired. Then guys, it has also been said that what has happened, the higher educational institutions, they are always considered like as a not for profit organization, but it is not the reality. Now you should start consider them as like the corporates, and they should be allowed to take some kind of steps by which they can make such kind of rainy day corpus, as I have told you has been made by the Harvard and such like type of universities. And how such a rainy day corpus will be made? If you will allow them to charge little bit higher, then they can meet their expenditures. But guys, this last point, personally I don't actually believe too much, if you ask my personal opinion, because anyhow education in India has been very expensive given the paying capacity of the masses. So still, though I will not say that absolutely it is very expensive, because the education in US and the West is even more higher, but given the paying capacity it is still high. So if the soft loan facility, universal loan facility to all the students can be given, and if students can be guaranteed that post their graduation they will get some avenue, and from that particular earning they can pay, so a kind of a sustainable model can be made. So this is some little bit more attachment which I will like to make. So guys, that's all. And when if you are writing a question, please try to provide their point of view also, because majorly the articles have not dwelt onto this particular dimension. So that's it, and now we'll take the next article. Now friends, this particular article pertains to the data regulation. Now here it has said that data should be treated as a common good, as a common entitlement. Common goods are those which are available, accessible to all, irrespective of their status. Now before going into the article, guys, some background. See, there could be two types of data. First of all, there could be the personal data and the non-personal data. Now personal data is one which contains your sensitive information, for example your health information, your preferences, your bank passwords, all such kind of digital data. Then this other is the non-personal data, which doesn't contains an information pertaining to any one individual, rather it contains the patterns. For example, pattern about the migration, pattern with respect to the traffic, pattern with respect to the climate, weather, all such kind of thing. Now in India we don't have law on any of the data's management. However, we have made committees for both. For personal data, we made the BN Shri Krishna committee, which suggested the personal data protection bill. Now such bill has been is under the consideration. Now today we'll discuss about the non-personal data. For that also a committee was constituted by the government, that was the Gopal Krishnan committee, and the Gopal Krishnan committee has given its final draft, and it has been kept for the public consultation. Now guys, it has been said that before the draft is finalized and is given a form of a bill, certain principles needed to be kept in mind. First of all the personal data which will be generated into the future, it needs to be generated, or it needs to be collected on one pillar, that is the wide sharing. Everybody should have the accessibility of such data, so that a collective welfare can be can be made sure. It has been said that a strong legal basis needs to be brought into the bill, so that companies who are generating the data, they don't restrict data to own to themselves own. Fine, why we are focusing so much onto the sharing of the non-personal data? Why we are talking so much about the accessibility of this data? Simply because this data is just like the digital infrastructure. Now I will explain you more. Guys, what happened earlier, the earlier model of economy was hugely dependent onto the physical infrastructure such as the railways, roadways, bridges, ports, etc. And whenever that infrastructure was made, nobody was excluded from that infrastructure. Everybody was allowed to use that infrastructure, and therefore basically the economic welfare came to everybody. Now what is happening? We are going towards a new model of economy, that is the digital economy. And into that digital economy, this data is the infrastructure. So why we should not make this data available to all? So therefore, this digital data needs to be made available to all. Now guys, it has been said that if we see today they are onto the digital landscapes, then there are only certain firms or certain companies which have turned just like the monopolies. They are controlling the entire vertical into the data. They are generating the data, they are storing the data, they are selling the data. Okay, you know the example of Google, Facebook, they are the data giants. Now guys, if we see, then 7 out of the 10 companies globally, okay, they are oriented onto the data structures. Fine, the major firms, they are earning money because of the data based models. And we had seen that majority of these companies which are working on data, they are located either into the US or into the China. And therefore, what they have turned into the enterprises, and entire countries are dependent on to those companies, and those companies at the end of the day are being regulated by the US and China. So therefore, data decentralization availability to all should be given, so that the small startups, they can grow, they can, by utilizing that data, can give enough of competition into the economy. Is it clear, guys? Now guys, it has been said that by the Gopal Krishnan committee, it has been said that there should be no monopoly over data, because data is similar to the digital infrastructure, and therefore there should be no monopoly, and it should be treated as a common goods, which I have told you. Now guys, it has been said that if we will provide them all, then the startups will benefit, and as startups will benefit, they will give employment to all. Then guys, the community can get benefit, because they will be able to make a better forecast for the disasters, for the pandemics which can come into the coming times. They can get better hold of the trends and all these kind of things. Then guys, it has been said that all the companies which are involved in collecting the data, for example, Google Map is collecting a large number of traffic data. So these data collectors, they should act as the data custodians. Data custodians means that they should have in mind that whatever data is being generated, that has to be utilized for the welfare of the community only. So guys, such kind of data management, data decentralization model will be required into the times to come, and as government is debating it, so it is high time that such considerations should be there into the mind of the government. So guys, very important topic for your GS paper 3 as well as GS paper number 2. So that's it about this article. Now we'll move to the next article. Now friends, this particular article pertains to the naval exercise that will be held between the India and Russia. However, it is not only a one-liner concept for the prelims, it has some other here and there attachments also. First of all, what has happened? Now, India and Russia will be holding the naval drills, a naval exercise into the Andaman Sea. What is the name of the exercise? The exercise has been named as the Indra. Okay, so IND stands for India, RA stands for the Russia. This exercise will be held on near the Straits of Malacca. Now, by the way, Malacca Strait is a very strategic point because it is a choking point. Fine. So all the shipments which are coming from the Pacific, and when they need to enter the India, they have to pass from the Malacca, and major of cargo shipments in both value as well as volume, they pass from the Malacca. Now guys, Malacca, it is located between the Malaysia as well and onto the other hand the Indonesia's island Sumatra. Now here the exercise will be concluded. Now guys, if we talk about the naval exercises right now, just a few days back, India had already convened the Passage exercise with the US. Okay, so US naval ship Nimitz, it was coming from the South China Sea. There we concluded this exercise. Now we will be concluding, we'll be doing the exercise with the Russia. And at the same time, what has happened? India had withdrawn from the Kavkaz 2020. Now this Kavkaz 2020, it is a Russia sponsored, or basically it is a Russian exercise which happens in order to enhance the capabilities of Russia. So here the large number of countries are given an invitation. For 2020 Kavkaz exercise, 18 countries were given the invitation, but India had withdrawn from the Kavkaz 2020. What was the reason? Reason was that the ongoing pandemic will not be going into this particular exercise. But now our question is being raised that India had participated with US, it is going to participate with Russia. Why it is denying only the Kavkaz 2020? The reason is very clear. Into the Kavkaz 2020, invitation to the Pakistan, China as well as Turkey has also been given. Now Pakistan, we don't share the good relations right now, particularly the China, the LAC dispute is going on, and Turkey has been very vocal onto the revocation of article number 370, and therefore Turkey is also not into right now into the good relations with the India. Not exactly good relations, but some discords have came between this thing, and because of such thing India had decided to pull out of the Kavkaz exercise. Now guys, this particular year's exercise was to be held into the southern Russia, into the Astrakhan. Fine, that thing. Moreover guys, the Kavkaz, it is also called as the Caucasus 2020. So if it comes into the exam, please don't get confused by the name. So guys, that's all into this naval drill. Also there is some strategic angle that India is maintaining a distance from the countries with which the relations are not going good. So guys, that's all about this article. Now we'll move to the next article. Now this particular article talks about the multilateralism that India is adopting right now in order to have large number of options of the allies. Is it clear? Now what has happened here, certain summits or certain meets have been listed where India will be participating. For example, now the SCO meet will be going to held, and there the defense minister as well as foreign minister both will be participating. Now guys, when we talk about the SCO, it stands for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and into the SCO, who are the members? They are the China, Russia. Then guys, other trick is that there are 5 countries into the Central Asia. 4 are there out of 5, the 4 are there, that is the Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. Turkmenistan is not the member. Please keep it in mind into the SCO. And other members are the India and Pakistan, who have joined in 2017. So all these are the members of the SCO. So there India is participating. Then guys, India will also be participating into the BRICS virtual meet. So BRICS stands for the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Then India will also be participating into the 2+2 security dialogue with the US. Now 2+2 security dialogue is there, where the foreign minister and the defense minister from both the sides, they meet. Now this particular platform has been very important because here the civil as well as military issues have been raised between the two countries and convergence points have been found. Guys, India also take 2+2 security meet with the Japan also. Now guys, then India will also be attending the Quad foreign ministers meet. So in Quad there are the 4 members, that is the Japan, India, Australia and USA. So all these meetings India will be participating into the times to come. So it again reflects that how India is now choosing the strategic autonomy into the times of the crisis. India is diversifying the base of their allies. So guys, it has been said that India is looking for the strategic formation despite of LAC tensions. So guys, just think all these things will be coming into the course of time as we will go forward and these meets will finally conclude. So friends, that's all about this particular issue, and now we'll move to the question section.
Now guys, please pause the video and try to answer the question. Question number 1 is with respect to the Poshan Abhiyan. Please read the statement and identify the correct code. Question number 2 is with respect to decarbonizing transport in India. Please read the statement and identify the correct code. Question number 3 is with respect to the Science and Engineering Research Board. Please read the statement and identify the correct code. Question number 4 is with respect to the Green AG project. Consider this statement and identify the correct code. Now the main question for today, it is from GS paper number 3 and it is a 15 marker question. Question says, what do you understand by AGR in telecom sector? What implications it might pose on viability of telecom sector in India? So guys, please try to write and provide some dimensions on it. So that's it. I hope you are liking our discussion. Thank you so much.